Hello, and welcome to our listeners around the world. This is the JAMA Editor's Summary, and today is Friday, February 21st, 2025. I'm Dr. Kirsten Bibbins-Domingo, Editor-in-Chief of JAMA and the JAMA Network, and I'm joined today by JAMA Deputy Editor, Dr. Linda Brubaker. Hello, Linda. Let's get started.
Hi, Kirsten. This week, JAMA and the JAMA Network published the first results of the Healy ALS platform trial. This platform trial investigates different therapies for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, using shared infrastructure to improve trial efficiency. The first regimen published in JAMA from this platform trial evaluated CNM-AU8, a suspension of gold nanocrystals designed to improve intracellular energy metabolism. It was a multi-center randomized trial at 54 sites in the U.S. 161 participants were randomized 3:3:2 to receive 60 milligrams or 30 milligrams of the gold nanocrystals or placebo. Assessment of the primary outcome, change in ALS disease severity and survival, occurred at 24 weeks. The investigators reported no benefit of CNM-AU8 on ALS disease progression. The second Healy ALS study published in JAMA investigated Pridopidine, a sigma-1 receptor agonist. 121 participants received Pridopidine and 42 patients received a matching oral placebo for 24 weeks. Investigators reported that Pridopidine did not impact the change in ALS disease severity and survival.
Dr. Turnbull wrote an accompanying editorial about these studies, as well as the results of the Healy ALS verdiperstat regimen published in JAMA Neurology and the zilucoplan regimen published in JAMA Network Open. He discussed some of the strengths of this first platform trial in ALS, a devastating condition, as well as some of the challenges that lie ahead for future platform trials. This was also discussed further in a related JAMA author interview podcast. Let's listen to author Dr. Sabrina Paganoni of Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School discuss how this study design makes efficient use of resources. This discussion is with JAMA Deputy Editor Dr. Christopher Muth.
And for a rare disease, it's important that we prioritize drugs and we screen them as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So at the very beginning of the trial, to jumpstart the trial, we actually had a competition and we received proposals from about 30 companies from all over the world, companies that wanted to enter the platform trial. And at the time, there was an expert therapy evaluation committee that included a number of scientists and colleagues that evaluated these drugs based on clinical potential, mechanism of action, and the diversity of the approach. So we wanted to pick drugs that had different targets for the first group. The prize of this competition was that there was some incentives for companies in terms of cost-sharing model to get the platform trial up and running. And so the first 4 drugs had very different mechanisms of action. And I want to share that that's also important for us as we set up the platform trial to be useful, not just to test a finite number of drugs or only, a small group of drugs, but we really set this up as an optimal infrastructure to advance the field in ALS.
And to further contextualize this content, we published a JAMA Guide to Stats and Methods on Interpreting Platform Trials by Dr. Webb and colleagues.
JAMA also published a survey study by Dr. Asaf and colleagues that included 3,200 adults experiencing homelessness in 8 California counties from October 2021 to November 2022. The authors investigated lifetime and past 6-month illicit substance use and substance type, as well as other measures, such as unmet treatment need. The investigators reported that there was a high proportion of current drug use, history of overdose, and unmet need for treatment in this study population.
There's also an article by Dr. Decker and colleagues about buprenorphine. These authors specifically looked at emergency clinician buprenorphine initiation for opioid use disorder. This was an observational retrospective study that included over 300,000 participants who received buprenorphine prescribed by emergency clinicians. Prescriptions were recorded from the California Controlled Substance Utilization Review and Evaluation System, or CURES. The authors found that among buprenorphine prescribers during the study period, the proportion that were emergency clinicians increased from 2% to 16%. Additionally, the authors noted that after buprenorphine initiation in the ED, 1 in 9 patients went on to receive continuous buprenorphine prescriptions within 1 year.
Dr. D'Onofrio and colleagues wrote an accompanying editorial. They reiterate how emergency clinicians are playing important roles in initiating treatment for patients with opioid use disorder. And JAMA also published 3 research letters this week, including a randomized clinical trial by Dr. Unlu and colleagues studying efforts to use large language models to screen patients for trial eligibility. The authors reported that patients who received AI-assisted screening were deemed eligible for the study more quickly than patients who were screened manually.
Dr. Lundberg and colleagues contributed a research letter in which they investigated the percentage of opioid tests unavailable in death investigations in 2021. The authors report that opioid test information was unavailable in 51% of the more than 70,000 total death investigations in their study. In a separate research letter, Dr. Mafi and colleagues evaluated COVID-19 related hospitalizations and mortality among vaccinated older adults with and without access to the antiviral medication Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir. This study included over 1 million adults aged 65 to 74 years of age in Ontario, Canada. They reported that an increased rate of Nirmatrelvir-Ritonavir prescriptions was not associated with reductions in hospitalizations or mortality for this population.
JAMA published several viewpoints this week. Dr. Menikoff, a physician and attorney, reviews the legacy of Henrietta Lacks from legal and medical perspectives. Attorney Matthew Lawrence and colleagues discuss important questions that courts are asking about social media and children's health. This transparency could help foster effective interdisciplinary collaboration between policymakers and researchers.
Dr. Hamilton and colleagues contributed a viewpoint about neurodiversity in medicine, in which they advocate for a more inclusive environment for neurodivergent individuals in medicine. And attorney Hadrian Rookley and Dr. Ryan propose shifting away from value-based payment. They call for a new Medicare agenda that empowers clinicians and patients rather than having insurers and corporate executives manage them.
There's also an opinion piece this week by Drs. Kahn and Whalen in which they reflect on the strengths and limitations of a recent trial published in JAMA by Dr. Huang, studying whether it is safe to omit surgery for low-risk ductal carcinoma in situ of the breast.
Yesterday, JAMA published an editorial co-authored by leaders of JAMA and the JAMA network, reaffirming the principles and values found on the mastheads of our JAMA network journals. Multiple recent executive orders from the new U.S. administration have substantial consequences for science, medicine, and public health. Many of these obstruct the flow of health-related data or communication of scientific information, and some directly change or suppress information for patients and clinicians. At JAMA and the JAMA Network journals, we have not changed our guidance for authors across the JAMA network, and we continue to publish science, opinion, and educational materials broadly with our long-standing goal of advancing health. The JAMA Clinical Reviews and Education section has a patient page on harm reduction strategies for people who use drugs. This patient page includes advice about testing drugs for contaminants, about overdose prevention, and about safer use of injection drugs. There's also a new Insights article by Dr. Lee and colleagues about climate change and Coccidioidomycosis. They discuss rising rates in California and review diagnosis and treatment of this fungal infection.
Dr. Singh and Dr. Nakasuka wrote a review that included 125 studies on out-of-hospital cardiac arrest in healthy adults under 40. It is a comprehensive overview of this condition. There's also a related JAMA Clinical Review podcast with Dr. Singh. Let's listen to a bit of his discussion with JAMA Associate Editor Dr. David Seimel.
The theme here is to establish a cause, I think. That's the most important. If the cause or the phenotype in a resuscitated case is established, then recent expert consensus statements recommend genetic testing focused on the potential candidate genes of that condition and a clinical evaluation of family members to identify relatives who have or are at risk of developing the same condition. Now, if the cause is not determined, first-degree relatives, it's still recommended to undergo a clinical evaluation, including an ECG, cardiac imaging, ambulatory monitoring, and potentially provocative electrical testing. And so that's how I think about screening in family members of persons resuscitated.
JAMA Medical News this week features a JAMA plus AI conversation with Dr. Balot-Escu on AI-guided lung ultrasound. You can learn more in the associated JAMA plus AI conversation podcast. Let's hear a bit from Dr. Balot-Escu.
This was a multi-center validation trial that evaluated the ability of artificial intelligence to guide and facilitate the acquisition of lung ultrasound clips that were of diagnostic quality by a group of healthcare professionals. The majority of them had no significant lung ultrasound experience. Subjects in the study underwent 2 lung ultrasound examinations, one that was performed by a lung ultrasound expert without using AI, and the second one was done by a trained healthcare professional with the use of AI.
And there's a Med News article by lead senior staff writer Rita Rubin about the Trump administration's change to the CDC's website and how this threatens patient and public health.
Thanks for tuning in to hear what's new at JAMA this week. These highlights were brought to you by Dr. Linda Brubaker and me, Dr. Kirsten Bibbins-Domingo. This episode was produced by Shelley Steffens and Dr. Krista Roberts at the JAMA Network. A link to this JAMA content can be found in the episode's show notes. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com. And thank you for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.